Alright, so today I thought I might as well shoot a video of this. I'm just prepping my fuel lines, and basically for now installing the quick disconnect fittings. Let's see if I can show you. Now on the factory lines to the tank and the selector valve, they do have quick disconnect that goes to the tank selector valve, and this style uses like a clip, and they're kind of a pain. Like, you have to basically buy a new one, because to get these out sometimes you're gonna bend and break them and stuff, and that goes to basically from the factory. They had nylon. This light's probably not gonna help me at all, is it? But basically that, again, goes to the tank selector valve, which are plastic bundy fittings. From there to the tanks, you have a preformed stainless steel line, which these were mostly intact. And then from there it goes to a braided flex with a compression, I guess that would be. And then it just has like rubber over it to protect the metal of the braided, I guess, and add a little more rigidity to the flex. Then from there is another bundy fitting, and of course I don't have the clips on this line, but there's the later model ones after the mid-80s have these like really heavy-duty metal clips. So it's still technically a quick disconnect, but with a much harder connection. The funny thing is, when you're looking at that, to the sending unit on the tanks, is you realize quickly that this whole setup, oh there we go, I can pull that down so you see the braided. You kind of realize that it's a little bit of overkill, and what you can see has happened in a 30-year-old van is this is the, what is this, the return side? Now this is the feed side, so the feed side, actually, I mean, they both broke off, but this one's still in the tube. And what's funny is the sending unit itself isn't even going to last as long as your line. So, I mean, that's something to say about these being nice stainless steel lines and have lasted for 30 years. I think the only bad spot I found, and of course this one doesn't have stickers, is these still had the factory stickers that say warning fuel, and under one of the stickers there were maybe a couple of cavities starting in the steel. So these are still great, but the problem is they're like impossible to find, and even if you can, that's going to be really expensive, or it's going to be new old stock. Here's the thing though, is when you're setting up fuel and trying to be safe, your assumption is going to be that, you know, oh, those sending units have to have those metal clips. Absolutely not. And the thing is, before 1986, I think, or maybe 87, they started this on the Ford trucks. I have no clue what's going on in the Mustangs and stuff, but I can tell you F-150 and E-150, they switched the system out, and it looked something more like this, which is what I'm running now. So they had a quick disconnect more like this, and this is push button. So very convenient, very simple to mess with lines. So this in the 80s would actually still go to the sending unit, as well as the tank selector valve, or from there to your pump if you don't have a dual tank system, however the setup is. And again, that's just a bundy fitting, which I can show you. The male end. Old fuel filter. So here's the old fuel filter, and of course this is the feed, so I can't really hook these up to show you, because these are 3/8. So that's the factory fuel lines. So your options are, you'll look at like regular rubber, braided, or even going to a threaded AN fitting. But for me, I found the best solution, and probably the best solution for anyone, is just switching to nylon. I'm going to show how to install the fittings because that is kind of a pain in the butt, but other than that, the advantages of nylon is that it's not going to corrode. They have more, I think they're like a 200 psi plus pressure rating. My fuel system only runs at 39 psi or something. It could be higher than that, but they're perfectly safe for gasoline, even ethanol. The only disadvantage is they are very strong. Like, it's basically vinyl, you know, it's almost plastic. Yeah, stainless steel may hold up better to like rocks and gravel, but I honestly don't think you could do that easily with this. Like, you would have to like roll over a rock and have it compress against it. But having said that, is I have thought of ways to you know, protect it, like brake lines. It's not on the table, but brake lines have a gravel guard which looks like a spring and goes over. So it was a thought. I even thought it would be funny to use like a metallic duct tape or something for extra protection. The only problem there is if you had a leak or something, it may be hard. Now, you basically, so I'm going to show you how to put these on. It is a pain in the ass. I was very frustrated until I finally got it. Oh, this light is not really helping. You can probably see this one went on basically perfectly. No big deal. This one is slightly twisted, but I don't think it's compromised at all. So that's the only thing with nylon, is even using the certain methods you'll read about, is sometimes it can kink on you. And obviously it comes in a roll like this, so bending it is a problem because it is so stiff. But one advantage of having a bundy fitting is once you're under the truck installing it, you'll be able to like twist this around and get it situated. So, and it's stiff enough to where it'd probably be okay. Like, I would still clip it to the frame like every other line, but it's so rigid and yet lightweight, you probably wouldn't even need to if you have the proper length, but I'm not going to suggest that. Like, I'll probably still clip mine, but just a point on the difference between nylon and braided. So again, this is the return line. That's the other thing. So the two lines on this particular truck, you know, anything from an, 79 or 81 up to a 91 F-150 and E-150 is going to be a 3/8 feed line and a 5/16 return line. With the horsepower I'm running, I should still be fine cloning the stock fuel lines. That should support plenty of power, so that's all I've done. The only thing I would say to that is what I did, I actually cut open my steel line and mic'd out to make sure the inner diameter was still the same, especially for the feed line. But the problem with, you'll notice with plumbing and fuel lines and vacuum lines, is different products and different materials will only give you one reading without specifying ID, OD, or even wall thickness. Some places will make you do the math. They'll give you one figure and then the wall thickness. I think all three should be listed at all times. Just whatever, even if it's overkill or redundant, but I can show you the line I screwed up so you can get an idea of what you're up against. And this was mostly attempting a boiling method with just my hands and pressing one of these fittings on. So I found a few other people doing this. At first it didn't work for me, but using like a brake flaring tool seems to work, and then putting the length of hose just far enough to where the fitting is going to bottom out. It may still kink in front of this if you're not going at the right pace, But then you can just take some channel locks or a wrench and kind of like, you know, unkink it and kind of slowly work it in. Some people will use, of course I have the wrong size clamp, some people will then clamp it. I think with particular fittings like this, if the barbs are wide enough, and this is like a triple barb setup, I don't think that's going to go anywhere. So that's definitely overkill and just, you're kind of wasting your money. So this was the front tank, aka the midship. Wow, I'm forgetting the size. What is that? A 12 or no, a 16 gallon, and the rear is a 22. So this one's a bit shorter. These usually come in 10-foot lengths, and to the rear tank is almost 10 feet. I left myself a little more slack than cloning this to the steel line, just because my new sending units go out a little bit wider, so always pay attention to that before you're cutting. You still want to get it like as tight as possible with less slack, because the thing with nylon, if there is a couple inches, it's going to show in the line and it'll bend. Like, it's not really a big deal as long as it's not kinking. Like, then that could be a problem. So as long as you have enough room for this to bend in some areas, it should be okay. Alright, so alright, let's just get on with I'll just show one, and hopefully that will go smoothly. So again, something to pay attention to are your actual fittings, right? So if you're doing a nylon setup with quick disconnect, you're going to look at something like, okay, 3/8, it'll say like 3/8 steel to 3/8 nylon. The problem is with it saying 3/8 nylon is you better make sure that the 3/8 nylon is the right inner diameter, because I had to return a couple of lines and completely change all my fittings. Actually, the only reason I changed the return line fittings were, you want the branding, I forget what this is. This stuff's made in like Norway or Finland. It's actually not Chinese, but this lighting setup is terrible. So you'll want the kind where your buttons and the actual insert are inside, because some of them won't seat all the way against the tank selector valve. So these low profile ones are like the best that you can get, because I had the one where the clip comes on a little on the outside, and it just wouldn't mate up with the selector valve. So these are the return lines, so they're 5/16. Again, just the best thing to do if you have your old steel line and it's junk or you're just not going to use it, take a hacksaw and get make sure your ID is the same and everything. And specifically, the barbs are that tricky to press on. The cool thing, the 3/8 one actually has a little O-ring, and I'm hoping that's not going to give me trouble. I may make another video just to see how that goes, but this video is going to be for the smaller return line. And again, for the rear tank, so it's almost 10 feet worth of hose. Alright, so all you really need is, your hoses. When you cut them, I use a carpet razor just to get a nice clean edge, and then make sure that the inside doesn't have like anything trapped in there, because that's going to cause a problem. Just make sure it's level, so if you get it seated all the way, it's definitely going to be enough over that third barb. So you are assured that that's not going to leak or anything or go anywhere. So the first thing you want to do, well, the things you need, number one, if you're doing fuel lines, you probably have motor oil in your garage, I'd imagine, or 3-in-1 oil. You could probably use vegetable oil and it's not going to hurt anything, but or petroleum jelly, but I have some, like, just some 10W30 here, and I'm just pouring some in the cap. Way more than you need. You only need a little on your finger, and you're basically just going to lube those barbs. So make sure you do that. It definitely makes a difference because you want to be able to twist this, because that helps with the kink, and if it does kink, the twisting helps grab that kink to the wrench so that you can get this on flush. So that's it. That's all you got to do for the fitting. Like I said, you'll see techniques with boiled water, heat gun. I even saw someone licking it with a propane torch, which I don't advise. Like, I did experiment with it, and it's not hard to bubble it up, and that's probably past its heat capacity. They can take a lot of heat, but this method, all I use is a blow dryer. Just run-of-the-mill Vidal Sassoon, Conair, whatever you have. It's enough heat, and you'll definitely feel it soften up. I would say go longer than shorter, and while you're doing it, I have a kind of goofy setup right here, but I just put the, you can't even see what I'm showing. I have my knee right here, and as I'm installing it, I have the hairdryer like this, blowing underneath it as I'm pushing it in so it stays soft, because it'll cool quickly. And if you're not familiar with a nylon line, it's borderline hard plastic feeling. Like, it's pretty tough. So the first thing you want to do, this may be different, like, but if you're watching this because you have a Ford truck, you're basically going to be using, this is the 5/16 hose, so you're going to use the 5/16. Yeah, I don't have the exact dimensions, but you may find 5/16 nylon that has the wrong inner diameter to your steel line, so that was what I had to change, and now I don't remember the inner diameter. But these are, again, cloned to my steel line. So what you want to do, that is curved a little bit, which could be an issue, but once this is all situated, you can kind of bend that just enough, and it's not going to kink, and it'll straighten out a little, but it's not really a huge deal. But I would also say it's better to have that bend either up or down. But that's the only problem with this, is how it comes. So what you want to do, though, before you lock it in, is you do not want any excessive... This is such a pain. I don't even know if the camera can see what the hell I'm doing. But you want enough hose to bottom out. Like, just a bit more, maybe like a 1/16 of an inch past to where the fitting is going to bottom out. If not, it'll absolutely kink, and even with that, it may kink, and I'm hoping it doesn't do that, but if it does, you're just going to take the wrench, there we go, like sideways. This is really awkward to look at the camera at the same time, but you're basically just going to hold that kink in place lightly as you slide it in. But again, you keep the heat on it, but I'm just going to double check my depth. That has to come out a little bit more. And don't get too frustrated, because I watched guys do this and they made it look easy, and I thought it was impossible. After like boiling water, because I originally tried the blower, or the hair dryer, and I had no results, so I switched to boiling. Then I saw someone use oil. I came back out in the garage, and all of a sudden it was working for me, so, and I got that midship done, so Alright, so that's a little too far, probably. That's like out 1/8 of an inch. See that? So I'm just gonna tuck that in a touch. Alright. If you haven't used these before, these wing nuts just slide up. I mean, you may not have one of these, so obviously this is for people with a brake kit. Of course, this isn't working now. Alright, so, but again, it's a little worrisome that it's coming out crooked, but we'll work on that a little bit. Actually, I did the, you know what? I did this backwards. Because I like to come in on the right side, I like to have this part locked in. So just flip it around. Double check my depths. Needs a little bit more. Come out a little bit more. No, it's probably... Wow, you can't see that on the camera at all. It's just lost in the shadow. Alright. So yeah, as you can see, this may take you a little bit. But that's important if you don't want it to kink. And again, that is... I want that in a little, or a little bit less length sticking out, basically. There we go. Because it's really about getting over those 3 barbs. Bringing it out a touch, actually. That's too shallow. See, that's the problem with it bending, is now it has larger outside length than an inside. Alright, that should work. But why that's happening is that cut isn't perfectly straight, so that's why that's important. Alright, so I'm going to lock this down. Let's see how well the camera can see this. Just make sure that you get the... This is like tucked up somewhere. So it's tricky with like 10 feet of this, but... Just make sure it's snugged away. Not that the hairdryer would hurt it, but it's really just annoying. Alright, so... I may have to resituate the camera here. Hopefully it won't interfere. Let's see if we can zoom in. So yeah, see, that's bending a little. You can work it as it's snug in there, and it's snug enough to where you're not going to really kink it, but make sure the vise is really snug. This may be tricky with doing my like knee technique holding the blower, the hair dryer. Alright, so now we're going to heat it up, and I think the best way is feel this before to get an idea of the stiffness, and then as you're heating it up, just compare it to behind it, and you'll definitely be able to feel that it's opening up. But again, the whole time that you're doing it, you're going to try to have hot air on it, and you may have a way better technique than what I'm about to do. And if we're lucky, this will go on without a kink. If it does kink, I'm going to have to like move the camera and do the wrench technique. Alright. So just work, make sure you get hot air on the inside as well. So just going from top to bottom. Try not to go behind so that the rear won't kink for any reason. It shouldn't because it's locked in there, but again, you're just going to keep pinching it. Make sure the back is definitely getting soft. I'd get a good, minute or so of heating it, And on the inside. That's definitely softening up. Alright. I'm keeping heat on it. Right? Remember that's lubed up. And I'm just gonna start going in, back and forth. So now turning one direction. Almost over the third. Alright, so that made it look easy, but that's why the oil is important, because, see, normally if my hand, like there, I, used one hand on the hair dryer, but normally I might go back and forth, but because it wasn't kinking and we had the proper depth, I could just keep turning it and pushing it one way, so... And that's definitely on there. You may see a little bit where it's not perfectly flush. Let me take it out and we'll look at it. But that's fine. That's still well situated over 3 barbs. So, see that? So that's not going to go anywhere. You're not going to be able to pull that off, and it's not going to leak. So that's all there is to it. I know that probably made it look easy. I was definitely really pissed off doing it earlier and, ruining a section of hose. Luckily I have some extra. And this can be still used when I go to do, like, any of my filter and external pump lines. But now seeing that I've been able to get 2 on there perfectly, I'm a little disappointed with the twisted and crimped one there, but I don't think that's really going to be an issue. like there's enough sidewall there to where I don't think that's really a problem. Luckily that's the return line, so. But yeah, that's all there is to it. If you want, you could, you know, if you are going to use this style clamp, these may still fit on my 3/8 feed lines, but I thought I sized those properly. There's other clamps, or you could just open this all the way and put it on there, but I honestly don't think they're necessary. Like when Ford used these on the sending units in the 80s, that's how they were on there. I don't think they used anything. But yeah, that's how you do a nylon fuel fitting. Again, you may want to go braided, like threaded AN line, but for someone like me on a super budget, this and the cost of material and finding the proper fittings on Amazon really was basically the best way for me to go. And if you have your original clips, like I may try to utilize this again. If you have your original, like this one just kind of keeps the sending unit lines together, but again, this is also really heavy steel. The nylon weighs that much less. Well, I'm holding 2 here, that's probably why that feels so heavy, but I want to say this probably weighs 50% less per line. So, but it'll fit in, you know, perfectly, because that's the same, that goes out to a 5/16 and a 3/8. So any of your frame clips that you can save or just order new ones online, this should still clip in. And that's why, again, to leave, you know, maybe give yourself a few extra inches of slack here and there so it has room to bend. So, I think that's pretty much it. That's, again, don't get too frustrated, but you saw that I just did that, and this is nylon that was kinking on me not more than a couple hours ago, so has nothing to do with the line necessarily, it's just all in doing it just the right way. So I'm gonna finish this up, and maybe I'll make a video. I may film doing these just in case they're a pain in the ass, because that O-ring, but I think it'll be okay. So anyway, see you later.